How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Bash for Beginners. This is episode number 5. This video is going to cover conditional syntax for comparing variables and file information in Bash. So this one is going to be uh, information packed. There's going to be a lot of different things. I have a couple different tables of syntax. I went ahead and just wrote the script for like this to display it. You can follow along and write it yourself again, but this would be a pretty long video if I didn't go ahead and do that. So yeah, basically last video we covered if statements. So something like this, at least the body or the skeleton of this whole conditional right here should look fairly familiar. What might be weird to you are the syntax in between two different variables, and as you can see, I've plotted on a list what they represent. So dash eq, if you were to use number one dash eq number two, that would only be true if the numbers you entered in were the same. LT is less than, GT is greater than, NE would be not equal, G is greater than, LE is less than. So that's that's how it's going to work. And I've just covered some of them. So the numbers you've entered are the same if number one, EQ number two, because I'm reading both of those numbers in from user input. The second number you inputted was larger. That's only the case if we use LT, because LT stands for larger than. So if, less than, excuse me. So if the first number you entered in was less than, the second number would be greater. And then greater than, so if someone GT num2, then num1 is greater than. So I'll go ahead and just do this script real quick. I don't think I've made it an executable yet, so I'll go ahead and do that. For those of you, if you forgot, this is how you turn a script into an executable. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this, and then I'm just going to run this program. So it's going to say we're going to compare two different numbers. We get that from the echo prompt right there. Enter in your first number. So our first number will be 14. Enter in your second number. We will do, if I was to do 12 into my second number, if you guys were to look here to see what would happen, our first number is greater than our second number, so the first number you inputted, it would be num1 is greater than num2. That's what we're going to get. So the first number you inputted, 14, as you can see right here, was larger, and then I just showed it again as num1 greater than num2. So that's how the comparison works for just variables. When we get into files, it can get a little bit difficult. As you can see, this is it's not real, it's three individual if statements, so don't be a little discouraged by the amount of code on the screen. But if we're talking about a file, then there's a couple things that we can tell about the file. We can see like -d if the file is in a directory, if the file exists, if what we've inserted was a file, that sort of thing. If the file is readable, if the file is writable, if the file is an executable, -x.w, -r. Some of these you may have used if you copy and pasted stuff into your terminal to download things, if you're on a Linux machine or something. Some of these you've probably used and just not realized you've used. So what this script basically does is it says now it outputs, now we will look at files within the computer. Oh, and this dash E, by the way, is my echo. It allows you to use like new line characters and stuff. So we're going to read a prompt into the variable file, enter in a file name, and then I just output nothing to space it out a sec. And then basically, so the first thing it checks is if the string is a file. If it is, it says it's a file. And then see, we haven't gone outside of our if statement yet. So if the file is readable, then we say the file is readable. That's the end of that if statement. And then if the file is writable, and etc. So these are, I just listed through pretty much all the different tests, seeing if files exist in the such. You don't have to like go through all these, but if there's some of these that you don't understand what they mean, I would just practice it and like see what you get. I can't walk you through all of these different ones. This is kind of a video where you just have to maybe pull the code that I provide or just look at what's going on when I'm recording this video so you can get a better understanding, because this is pretty much going to be on you to figure out. It's going to be uh, a little bit of tinkering around with, but I'll go ahead and just run the rest of this now. So again, it's going to ask me to compare different numbers. I'll do 10 and 10. It says numbers you enter the same. Now we're going to look for a file within the computer, enter a file name. I'm just going to enter the name of this program, so video5.shell. And then as we're going to see, it's going to go through this first statement, is if dash f file. So if this file is a file, it's going to say this is a file. So video5.sh is a file. And then we check for dash r. Dash r is for readable. As you can see, it's readable. Dash w is writable, so we go into writable. And that's all inside of, I kind of want to point this out, that's all inside of this initial if it's a file. We're going to do all these because if we know that this isn't a file, why check all the rest of it? Because all of that's going to be no. And then we just have a simple else statement right after that for the rest of it. Remember, there's a couple fees in here because they close off all the if statements. So, and then we'll just we'll keep going down. So now it's saying checking if file is an executable. It's the dash x. It's going to say the file isn't executable because I use chmod. So it's pretty smart that I waited for that. And then finally we're just checking if the file exists. Obviously the file exists because yeah, we checked if it was a file in the first place. So yeah, those are just, I mean, everything else in this code you have seen before, just not these little arguments right there. You should be pretty familiar with if statements, if else, elif statements from my last video. If they still confuse you a little bit, feel free to ask me some questions. Look through my repository. It has a few different files with those in there, and honestly just practice it because you're not going to get better if you don't practice. But that's pretty much the end of this video. Thanks for watching. Again, if you have any comments or questions, leave them down below and I'll check them out. Hope everyone has a nice day, and thanks for watching.